and welcome to Turtle Tracks Podcast. This is your host, Brian Van Hooker, and I'm here with Patrick Ehlers, the writer of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Sourcebook for IDW. Patrick, thank you for being here. I'm really excited to talk to you.
Oh my God, thank you for having me. I've been working on this thing in isolation for so long. It's great to talk to someone about it.
Okay, so for those who don't know, the IDW is going to wrap up its 150 issues, wrap up with a issue at 150, and then not reboot the series, but it's going to start a new number one. And along with that occasion is coming Ninja Turtle Sourcebook, which is a beautiful, exhaustive guide to everything that's happened in those first 150 issues. Is four of them, right? There's four of them coming?
Yeah, there's four issues coming total, and then it will be collected in the sort of collected editions, that same sort of like fat bound hardcover thing.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so it is designed to be both these four separate issues and this one big fat volume that'll function as an IDW Turtles encyclopedia. So the first issue really focuses on the relationship between Hamato Yoshi and Oroku Saki, and is just sort of like the street level turtle stuff. Issue number 2 is more, it's all Dimension X, everything that has anything to do with Utroms and Triceratons and all that stuff. That's issue 2. Issue 3 is Gods and Time Travel. So we're going to get our Pantheon there, and we're going to get Armagon and everything. And then issue 4 is Mutant Town. Which requires its own volume because Sophie Campbell is unstoppable in creating New Mutants.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much amazing stuff was introduced to me.
Yeah. Agreed.
So I mean, like, it's when we're recording this, it's early March. The first issue is already out, and then the second issue comes out April 3rd.
April 3rd is correct. Yes.
So they're big. Like these, I mean, the first one, I have a copy of the first one, which is like this massive 100 pages. Are they all about the same length? Are they all 100 pages?
They're all 96 issues, yeah, or 96 pages, yes.
Oh wow, jeez, that's.
Yeah.
I mean, when did you? First of all, I guess before we get into this though, what's your backstory with Turtles? Like, did you grow up with Turtles? Like, what was your relationship to Turtles prior to this?
Yeah, I mean, I was born in 1982, so I was barely forming consciousness when the Turtles comics were published. My introduction to them was, through the 87 animated series, and then like really, really, really through the 1990 movie, right?
Sure.
Like that's between that and the, like, I was a little arcade rat at the time too. Like,
Nice.
my dad used to take me camping, and we would always get rained out. We just had like the weirdest luck that we would go to a campground, it would get rained out, and then we would just go hang out in the arcade all day. And so like, for me, those vacations were The Simpsons arcade game, Street Fighter 2, and Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the arcade game. Like,
Oh,
those,
nice.
like that's just like those are my ways in are the 1990 movie, the arcade game, and the within the Palladium role-playing game franchise, the TMNT and Other Strangeness, sort of like add-on to the Heroes Unlimited role-playing game. And that's one of the things that, we skip ahead 40 years later, when we start talking about doing this source book, that I was like, that's what I want this to be like. I want it to feel like the TMNT and Other Strangeness book that I would just pour over. And it's just like pages upon pages of like how you roll up a character from a different animal that you're mutating. And I loved that thing. So I was ecstatic in starting in like issue 101 and onward, as Sophie starts pulling some of those, Diamond is a mutant porcupine who, like, there's a drawing of that character in this TMNT and Other Strangeness book. But like that's what I was really after in doing this thing, is like, I want to replicate the feeling of poring over an RPG book and just like finding more and more information.
Oh, that's cool. I feel like I was never smart enough for those games. Like, I was
Maybe you just weren't dorky enough for them, sir.
I think I have Other Strangeness. I think I've got one of them, and I like it because the art and but I was like, I could never. If there's a game in here, I don't know what it is.
Well, it's tough because you got to get other people to, it's basically like D&D, right?
I
Um,
got a game. And IDW did this great. I'm sorry, Andrea.
yeah,
IDW did
no.
a great game. God, what the hell was it? It's called Out of the. It was
Oh,
something.
Out of the Shadows,
Yeah,
possibly the like
I spent
tabletop,
all this
like.
money on this Kickstarter.
Yep.
And like it was me and a friend. I'm not friends with him anymore. And me and a friend, and he explained this game to me once. We played it once. Took hours, and
Right.
I never played it again. It's just I can't. It's my brain. I'm not smart enough for these games. I don't understand.
Well, I mean, if it makes you feel any better, I think I probably played Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness twice,
Okay,
and the rest of the time I was just rolling up characters. I mean, that's my experience with D&D and with like Vanilla Palladium and like any tabletop role playing game is I just like making the characters.
sure.
So yeah, actually sitting down and playing them. Yes, there is a game in there, but like, I don't have the patience or the wherewithal for that.
Like I like some like I don't know. I like some board games, card games, things like that. But I've just found like even video games. Like I love the turtle games
Mm. Hmm.
mostly because they're like just brainless. Just punch those
Just beat them
multicolored
up. Yeah.
foot and just I don't have to think about it. You know what I mean? Like that's I don't know. My brain was not built for.
Did you play Shredder's Revenge? I assume you did.
Was that?
Did you play Shredder's
Oh,
Revenge?
it's fantastic. Although
Yeah. Mm.
I cannot make sense of the damn portal part, the new part, the add-on.
Oh, it's tough. It's
I played that for 45 minutes with my friend. We collected 50 crystals
yeah,
and nothing happened. I don't
right.
I love the game, the standard game. I don't
Mhm.
understand the portal part at all. And I
Yeah.
want to because that's the part you can be Bebop Rocksteady, Ninjara's in there, but I don't
Yeah.
end up playing.
Yeah, and you can be transform into Shredder too, but like
Yeah.
all of their move sets are like abbreviated. Like they're not as much fun to play as I mean, hey, you got Usagi Yojimbo in there.
Oh yeah, that's amazing.
It's incredible stuff.
And I play it with my daughter a lot, who's obsessed with Karai. So the fact that
Mm.
Karai is a playable
Yep.
character, so the add-on's great. I just the portal thing is like threw me. I don't get
Yeah,
it.
it's confusing.
Yeah. So, but
Um,
anyway, to the source
yeah.
book. So, you're a fan since you were a kid. Like, were you like a turtle nut? Like you kind of the toys and all that stuff, or
Yeah, yes, I was obsessed with the toys, obsessed with those first two live action movies. Had wore literally. I know people say that they like wear out cassette tapes, and I think they just mean it as like a form of exaggeration. But I literally wore out my soundtrack cassette to the first Ninja Turtles movie
oh,
from
nice.
playing it so much.
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I mean, like, so from that point, like, I would say that my turtle fandom, like, sort of waned, like, as I, like, got into, like, my older teenage years, and sort of, like, through my 20s, and, like, I would say that I didn't really, like, sincerely come back to the Turtles, until the IDW, like, launch of those comics, in 2011. Um, and that coincided with a cross country move that I was doing. I was moving from Chicago to LA in August of 2011, which is when the series relaunched, or launched from IDW. And I was in Los Angeles and like didn't have you know too much of a plan of like what my life was going to be like in Los Angeles. I didn't have any friends really, and so I started a comics blog shortly after moving here, with a friend of mine, Drew Baumgartner, who's now an editor at Marvel. And we wrote about just like comics we were reading. And this is like a way for me to like keep in touch with a friend of mine that I'd moved away from, right?
Okay.
Um, and the IDW Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles was one of those comics that we were like, yes, we were all in on it from day one, right? Um, and like, so it was that, and like the New 52 was a big part of that. And so like, we
Oh,
were writing
sure.
about DC comics, and all this kind of stuff. So like I wrote with Drew and with the other writers that we brought on board a bunch of pieces about those Turtles comics for years and years and years. And had the pleasure of interviewing like Bobby and Tom and some of the guys at IDW about the Turtles, like sort of in during that time, like while we were writing these pieces. And the oral history that appears in the back of issues 93 through 100,
Yeah.
where it's just like interviews with the creators. That's me. I did
Oh,
those
nice.
interviews. Yeah, I like in the lead up, like a year before issue 100 came out, I just sort of cold emailed Bobby and was like, but this is Bobby Curnow, who was the editor on Turtles at the time, who had a good relationship with from interviewing and writing pieces
Yeah.
about their comics for so long. And I was just like, hey, are you guys planning on doing anything for issue 100? It seems like a fun milestone to mark. And he was like, yeah, we're thinking about doing this like oral history. Would you be interested in like handling this? And what they thought they were going to do was like send out a a 3-question questionnaire to like everyone who worked on Turtles and like see what they wrote back and just like whatever. And I was like, no. If we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And
Yeah.
so I talked to like, I think I talked to 100 different writers, artists, just like everyone I could to get the most complete like oral history of those first 100 issues.
I remember reading it and thinking this like I don't know I don't think I don't know if I doubt you know this. That's what I do. Like I'm a
Hmm.
magazine writer, so like I did the official oral history of the Last Ronin.
Oh,
Um,
great.
Very similarly, I emailed IDW because I'd done interviews
Yeah.
with Tom and Bobby and all these people, and I was like, what I think it was right around when for issue 1 came out. I said, can I do the oral history of this?
Oh, awesome.
I've done them I worked for Mel Magazine. I work for Crack now. I just did this 13,000 word oral history of Reno 911 like a day ago.
Incredible.
So much work.
Yeah.
But like
Yes.
I chased that story for like a while because every time it was like, hey, we're not going to start it until the book is in, and then the book took like 2 years to do.
Right.
But like it was very much probably a similar thing where it was like I was just me emailing them like hey, just check it in, like just
Yep.
so I did the official oral history of that with Inverse. So like the amount of work that goes into those things, that's kind of what I've come to specialize in magazines, is
Yeah.
that it's so much work. Like
It's so much work, and like it comes to you in like such interesting and unexpected ways where you're like because when you start asking people questions about stuff, and I as many as I could, I did like these interviews on the phone or in person.
sure.
I went I went down to San Diego, I think 6 times to have like multiple hour-long interview sessions with Kevin Eastman, Bobby Curnow, and Tom Waltz, just the 4 of us around a table together.
Oh, nice.
And like we had a like range of issues that we were going to be discussing, and then it was just like, okay, let's go, let's dig in. Where is Kevin interested in like talking about stuff? Where does Bobby have something like extra to say? And yeah, it's just like it's the best finding those little moments of like passion and insight, and then drilling down into them and being like, tell me everything about that.
Well, it's so much better to it's like getting like whenever people are like, oh, can I do it via email? I'm like, the rhythm's all wrong.
Hmm.
And like
Yes.
it's so much better to get like people together. Like I just did the oral history of Eurotrip. Um,
Incredible.
I know. But the best part of the story, and this is a dumb little thing, is when they were the writers were arguing over how poorly they'd done in the box office. So like finding those moments where it's like this is the really conversational, like you can hear the
Yes.
conversation part of it. Like that's what I like about the oral history format, is like you really when you can hear it, and that's
Yeah.
yeah. So
Well, and I mean, I felt like, especially for Ninja Turtles, and these comics are so, for being a like big IP property, right? Like this is a Nickelodeon owned property, being written by a ton of different people, being drawn by a ton of different people. There are so many like auteur voices that created these first 150 issues.
oh
Like
yeah.
Sophie Campbell is an auteur. Paul Allor is an auteur. Tom Waltz, like all of these people who have such specific points of view and interjecting these comics, which again are like huge mainstream IP comics with their very specific points of view. It's so personal for everyone, and it's personal in a different way. And so being able to like dig those out of people by talking to them in person is just the best.
The very fact that Tom got to do 100 issues and then Sophie got to do
I
50,
know.
like it's stunning. Like
Yeah.
that just two voices were allowed to tell that much story. It's insane.
Yeah, well, it's so, and it's interesting because like it is those two voices that are like the primary voices, but like not to discount Kevin, who's been like in the co-driver seat for the entire time, and definitely not to discount Bobby, who I don't know how he corralled the talent that he did for this thing. But yeah, I mean, like, I just mentioned that this series had been going since August of 2011, which is almost exactly the same time that the New 52 started. How many relaunches has DC had since then, right? Like,
Oh yeah, this was stunning. It's amazing. And
nothing
like
gets
not
to
only that,
150 issues.
you're right. And there's also like Santaluco, who like
Yep.
heralded story like Secret History of the Foot Clan is his story, right? Like or Bates
Well,
and
Burnham wrote it, but Santaloco definitely has like his
right.
foot on the gas for it. But then he writes the Shredder in Hell, like 8 years later.
Yeah, I just
And
think
then he's coming back for the Untold History or Untold Destiny of the Foot Clan as
it's
well.
crazy. Like
Yeah.
and, like just the fact that like those stories were able to kind of weave. Like I'm particularly fond of Bates and Weaver for
Mm-hmm.
Bebop Rocksteady Destroy the Universe. Like I love that entire Destroy Everything. That miniseries is so fun to me. I love that.
Yep.
It kind of reignited my love for Bebop and Rocksteady. Um, but anyway, okay.
Well,
So when I get
and
to
they,
go
sorry,
ahead.
I want to stay on
No,
Bates and
please.
Weaver for a second,
Yeah.
because they, in themselves, they had this like mini furnace of like opposite creative types, like kind of grinding against each other, which makes this beautiful thing in both of those Bebop and Rocksteady miniseries. Because Bates is a very like, he wants to have fun, like his philosophy and storytelling is always like have fun, bright colors, be goofy, who cares about whether it makes sense. And Weaver is the opposite, where he's like, this is deathly serious, we need to understand every step of this. And like that's what comes out of their chaos is Bebop and Rocksteady.
That's so cool. That was a fun one to interview. Those guys. And I just love those stories. That I
Yeah.
mean, is going back into the IDW thing. I mean, like that's probably my favorite mini series. Do you have a particular favorite mini series that informed the lore?
Oh man, tough question. I love the Path of Karai, which I know isn't a mini series so much as it is 4 issues within TMNT universe. But I feel like that was just, they put the miniseries on hold so they could string a bunch of them together into one macro series.
I liked that series. I liked it better when they went back to the mini series. Like Universe,
Mhm.
I liked the kind of I don't know something about the mini series to me felt more like I don't know. I like
Yeah,
Universe.
it feels more
I like the
complete.
way it was broken
Yeah.
up better in the other ways, personally.
Yeah, well, and I mean, Universe, especially reading it as it was coming out, had this thing where they were 20-page stories with usually a 4-page backup story, and sometimes the backup stories were like one-off, and sometimes they were just like kind of fillery stuff. But sometimes, like that, the Inside Out story that is Kevin Eastman and Bill Sienkiewicz, and it's like in the back of the first 5 issues of Universe. So it is its own 20-page story, but like having to like follow it from over the course of 5 months, 4 pages at a time. That thing was incomprehensible to me, until I finally got it collected and was like, oh, this is magical, and I love it.
Sure. I mean, that's what it was like with the what was this back? I don't know if you were you a fan of the Archie series back in the day?
I wasn't. No, I
Okay,
mean
because like there was
that was sort of
backup
during my
stories
dark
like
period.
that where like the Mutanimals or like Future Raphael and Donatella would have these stories, and it was like 3 pages that ran for
Right.
the issues. And it was like, but I was like, I love the design, so I was fascinated by them. But yeah, it can be hard to follow backup stories like that. So
Yeah, I would say that some of my favorite stuff that like I honestly don't know how well it adds to the mythology, but like I I love it when Kevin takes an issue. Like his early annual that's just like the almost Pulp Fiction-esque crime story that like keeps jumping back in time is super cool. I love his Battle Nexus issue. Which is just like bonkers crazy. And I don't know, like that's the sort of stuff that well, I don't know if it necessarily adds to the lore, it like asserts the personality of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles
Hmm.
so forcefully. And I just love that Kevin gets to be a part of that like throughout.
Jumping into the source book, like uh how did you end up getting this opportunity to do it?
Yeah. So I mean, I sort of got a cold email from the collected editions editor, Alonzo. What is Alonzo's last name? Um, a cold email earlier last summer saying, "Hey, we're talking about doing a source book for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Is that something you'd be interested in writing?" And I was like, let me know if you have any questions. And I was like, excuse me, I am all questions.
Yeah.
What exactly are you guys looking for? But no, I mean, it really was, an outcropping of my work on the oral histories for the first 100 issues. Yeah.
Very cool. And like, how did you wrap your mind? Like, how did it become 4 issues? How did you figure out how long they needed to be? Like, was that told to you, or did you figure out no, it needs to be this? Like, how was that all figured out? Because
Yeah.
it's so much story.
The original pitch was just doing the collected 400 page thing, just a
Okay.
massive tome, and when like that's what they said that they wanted, and I was like, okay, I had my touch points of the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Other Strangeness RPG book, and I was like, so here's how I would do it. Every page is going to be like an article, basically, on a character. Sometimes there'll be 2 page articles, and then I just like ground out an outline for like here's how I arrange it. I kind of want to do it narratively so that if you're reading it, it feels like you're getting a story. It's not just like they're less like isolated articles and more like a piece on a larger story. And that's so we had that all pitched out, and then Alonzo was like, so we'd like to do this as 4 separate issues. Can throw your outline into a blender and then pour it back out into 4 equal cups? um, uh, and I, had a stroke, said yes, and figured it out.
So you got to figure out, okay, this one's about
Yeah.
magic. This one's about this. This one's about that. I was gonna say,
Well,
like,
and yeah.
go ahead. No, I
No,
was gonna say, like, for the audience, like, if
mhm.
the way you did it, it makes it super digestible. Like the like I was just reading through the pages for the individual turtles, which I think each turtle got like 2 pages.
Yeah.
So like it makes it like yes, there's a whole story to tell, but like 400 pages or even 100 pages can sound like, oh my god, that sounds like a lot. But
Mhm.
like the way you put it together was like it's like what? I don't remember what this was. I had a book. I used to love the X-Men, and there was this book I had when I was a kid. It was just like a character guide, right? But it
Yes.
was just something, and I love just digging through that and kind of flipping to the pages and all. So like I said, like having read through the first issue of this, it's super digestible. You like, yes, there's a story to be told, and you can kind of get all the information you need, but it's like just kind of like, oh, this is a fun thing to kind of like go down memory lane with. And I was talking to you
Yep.
before, like, so kudos to you for putting it together that way because it's
Thank
very
you.
versatile. Um, but also like I remember thinking like when this was coming out, I was like, oh, this is cool. I'm gonna get it because I get everything. But I was like, I don't need this, right? And
Yep.
like because I was like, I've been reading it since day one. I haven't missed an issue. I got the first issue the week it came out. Like I've been on board since the beginning, and I've got 3 pages into this book, and I was like, all right, I forgot about that. Who's that guy? Like I
Yep.
completely forgot about who some of these characters were. So there's so much because it's not just 150 issues. It's 150 issues plus
Hmm.
how many side books? Like it must be at least another 150.
Yeah, it's just about another 150. It is everything that is like considered part of the IDW canon. So every single miniseries, the entirety of universe, the Usagi Yojimbo crossover is going to be in there. The two Ghostbusters crossovers are going to be in there.
Oh wow.
Um,
Because those ones are
yeah,
canon, right?
those are all canon. Yeah, those all really happened.
Oh wow. Okay.
So that's yeah, like everything that these characters experienced is going to be in this somehow. And like it really it's something that has sort of broken my brain over the last couple months of like you know, especially something like the Armageddon game, but also, you know, like in the lead up to issue 100 and you know, City at War and all that stuff. That like it's an amazing plate of pasta, right? And what I'm trying to do is take out an individual noodle and show it to you, right? There are so many different concepts and characters and stories that intersect to make all these things happen. And I just want to pull out one thing and be like, here's what one character experienced on every single step of this journey. And it's like clarifying and weird to be like, oh yeah, then this person kind of like goes away for a little while, or like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, how just tracking like Alopex's journey, for example, it becomes, or you start to realize that there are so many more, like everything is heartbreaking and personal, even when they're going through these enormously big story beats.
I mean, like how was just breaking it up by characters like the easiest way to go about it, or that make it harder? Like,
Oh, I don't know. It's we're
it's
arguing counterfactuals here. I have no idea.
it's so weird. Because like just picking apart Shredder's, like or like for example, like going into Shredder's story, like it's so like you narrowed it down very nicely, but like to not get stuck on the everything about Kitsune about within that. You know what I mean? Like
Yep.
that's
Hmm.
I don't know. Like it's the task of this is uh it's a lot. So
It is a lot, and you know when I first handed in issue one, there was like a little bit of, I don't want to say panic, but just like a little bit of concern where you know, from editorial and from Nickelodeon of like, oh, you know, we are breezing over Rat King, we're breezing over Kitsune, where it's a really abbreviated read of the Triceraton invasion, and I was like, yes, all of that comes later. Like we
okay.
will get the opportunity to dig into everything deeply when we get to it thematically. And so like it is it's divided up by character, but then sort of presented chronologically, and then each of the issues is divided up thematically. So like I'm a big structure nerd. I really I am never happier when I'm working on a creative project than when I am setting up the spreadsheet that organizes the whole thing, right? And so that's how I approach this, because there's just so much information
Sure.
and so many characters and so many things that happen to them over the course of these comics that came out over the last 13 years.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's I think just organized in the only way that my brain could manage it.
Is there particular like I don't know characters that you liked that was exciting to kind of no, did you okay, I'll go back to that. I'll come back to that.
Yeah.
Do you have a particular favorite IDW original character that stands out to you?
Ooh, well, I mean, it's hard to argue against Alopex.
Alapex.
Uh, yeah, she's fantastic. Who else do I just love that's an IDW original character? Um, I like Zodi a lot. I think she's cool. I mean, a mutant scorpion just already gonna like right to my heart, love it.
Yeah.
But the fact that she is like a bit of a nihilist, like doesn't seem to is unswayed by the sort of sentimentality that the rest of the characters are swayed by. I find that really fascinating. Um, I love the sophistication of the Utrom site Triceraton, like there's this whole thing around reproduction and how like they need each other for reproduction, but like they're also using it as methods to control each other. Like, so I guess
Yeah,
I don't know if that's a single character there, but like these sorts of concepts that I just find like endlessly fascinating from this stuff. I also and this, I mean, okay, I'll just well, nix that. Toad Baron is also a character that I can't get enough of. I love that
really.
guy.
Okay.
He's nonsense, right? He is a Miyazaki creation. He is an engine for Spirited Away esque nonsense. And every page in the Toad Baron's Den of Delights is just my absolute favorite.
That's great. So there's more of that in issue 3.
Issue 3, yeah, yep.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, lots of and because as soon as you start to see pages like that are filled with so many like kind of crazy details,
Yeah.
I just want to highlight those things and like bring them to the fore and sort of like make a place that is a catalog for crazy details. Throughout the issue, throughout the first issue, and you'll see it throughout all the rest of the issues too. We've got little like chime-ins from various characters. Renee, the time traveler, chimes in to give a little perspective on things. Sometimes it's just her like kind of surfer chick insight, and sometimes it's time traveler insight. And then we also get Harold Lilja, who's also great. Should have answered him as one of my favorite IDW creations. He's amazing. But he'll chime in on tech, or every now and then if there's an intellect on the page that he takes issue with, I'll have him chime in and sort of tear someone apart. And then also notes from Professor Miller, the sort of Foot Clan expert who is murdered by Jenica in what issue would that have been? So 40 something. But yeah, the guy who uncovered the Ashinohumitsu and discovered the secret history of the Foot Clan. So like all of that stuff, those three voices in particular are so good at presenting those like tiny little bits of trivia, those tiny little bits of the Toad Baron mentions a dish that he's serving, and like we can comment on that through these other character voices, and that's sort of the most not that writing the rest of it is dry, but that's the part of it where I get to have the most fun, right?
It seemed like that. I was going to ask you about that very specifically because I was like, it seems like that's a good way to like pop in little fun details and like give it voice in a way that the rest of it can't. So that's
right,
cool.
because the rest of it's got to be like a little bit more clinical. I'm trying to sort of write it from the like in a like Wikipedia sort of standard voice, not having too much of an opinion expressed about the characters within the actual articles themselves. But yeah, the character voices, then they get to go off.
Did you work with Tom or Sophie or anybody with this, or did you just go strictly from the books?
Yeah, so it's mostly from the books. I emailed back and forth with Tom a little bit, and with Sophie actually. Mostly with Sophie, we were just working out because I'm writing about especially now in this time travel issue. We're going all the way up to the end of issue 150 here, so like I had to fully understand what was happening going into the end of what's happening with Donatello and Armagon and all that stuff. I've it is largely from the books. I am taking some stuff from my interviews with them, and then from chatting with them around this, but largely from the books. If we ever hit like a disagreement about like wait, is this the way this played out? Is this canon? Because there's a lot of room for interpretation in the comics. We default to what's in the text, right? If something feels right, but the text says otherwise, we default to the text. The text is king here.
What was ambiguous out of curiosity?
Oh, geez. I don't know that I'm going to be able to point to. Here's one example from issue 2. There is a like a sort of stray line of dialogue that has Professor Honeycutt warning Krang about the overuse of mutagen in creating the Triceraton army, that is going to cause like not economic but ecological collapse on Ultramonon. I had written it in there, and there was a question of like, wait, is that true, or like was he really just like not want to be part of the Utrom war machine? And it's like both things are true, but like I made sure that we left it in there because it's in the text.
Oh, interesting. Of the four, so the four issues again. So like history of the Foot Clan and Hamato Noroku and all that is number
Mm-hmm.
one. Two is Dimension X. Three is Gods and Magic. Four is Mutant Town. Is there a particular one of those four that is like the most exciting to you?
Yeah, the most exciting to me was issue two. Um,
Sure.
and I'm a big Star Wars dork, so like put me in space and I'm happy. Um, and it's just neat to like really dig into the kind of stuff that I would sort of just like glaze over as I was reading the comics initially, of like who are all these Utroms, all these various like counselors and generals and lieutenants and all this kind of stuff. And it was neat to just be like, all right, we got Cleve. What's Cleve's journey? Okay, Motaro. Okay, what happens to these guys? And so like nailing down all of that spacey stuff was super fun. I'm finishing up my work on issue 3 right now, and the part that I find the most intimidating is the time travel, just because like every sentence I write, I have to be like, okay, is that actually what happened? Because there's so many like causality loops kind of like coming back
Sure.
around on them.
But the
Yeah.
whole point of BF Roxy Destroy Everything is to only cause
Yes.
like causality loops. Like the whole book was we're just gonna ruin, like ignore and destroy every time travel rule ever.
Except it also works. Like this again, this is the melding of Ben Bates and Dustin Weaver, is that Bates was like, we're gonna show as many alternate timelines as we can. Logic is gonna collapse on itself, and Weaver is like, not if I have anything to say about it, and then wraps it all up in a way that, if you let yourself think about it hard enough, actually does make sense.
Okay, so nuts.
Yeah,
Um,
it's crazy.
Now, did you go back and read from issue one and every story and everything to do this?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I did. I did that when I did the oral histories. I've probably read every issue of this series, I don't know, 20 times.
Oh wow.
I mean, like, yeah, it's I've got the all of the collected editions just sitting in piles on the desks surrounding me,
Oh,
and
nice.
I will until this whole thing is finished. I feel like a crazy old wizard with just like piles of scrolls around me.
But yeah, so I mean, like maybe a fun way to go through this is name a favorite moment or storyline or something from each turtle. Is there a favorite Leo moment or storyline that stands out to you?
Oh man, yeah, yeah, sure, okay. So I love the Leo Macro series issue, when he sort of has this. That they're up in Northampton, and Koya is like back and ready to kick his ass.
Hmm,
And he fights with her for a little bit, and then is like, no, you know what? We can handle this in like a like peaceful kind of way. And they just sort of like meditate together. I love that stuff. I love Leo tapping into the astral plane and like embracing the sort of like magical side of the turtles in his own way, that is not in the same way that like Donatello does later.
sure. How about speaking of Donnie? What's a favorite Donnie story?
Oh man, it's got to be 44, right? When
Yeah,
he gets his
with all
shell
those
cracked
things.
open.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's crazy stuff.
That
I remember.
moment, that's the only one I don't have a first issue, a first
Oh no.
printing of. Like it
Yeah.
was suddenly everybody was buying this book that I had no trouble getting the week before. It was insane.
Oh, you know what? I'm gonna say that's second place for me.
Sure.
And first place is issue 150.
Oh, okay.
So obviously can't talk
Oh
about
yeah,
it.
sure.
But I just want to tease that issue 150 is something special. If the Armageddon game is like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Crisis on Infinite Earths, a big bombastic crossover, whatever. issue 150 is the Ninja Turtles Final Crisis. Like it is as focused and weird and introspective as a Grant Morrison book, and it is wonderful and a great like thing for Donatello. So I'm very excited for people to get their hands on it. I think it's an issue that we're going to be talking about forever.
Oh, that's awesome. What about Raph?
Raph, I hate to just say all of their micro series.
No, but I mean those are really good.
It's a really great issue. And the, you know, it,
Talking Target
Ben,
R, or is that the macro?
yeah, Target R,
Yeah,
yeah.
so good. Ben
Um,
work is amazing in that.
yeah, it's incredible stuff. And there's a moment in there when it's like a flashback to, you know, when Raphael is like separated from his brothers, you know, in the like pre-issue 1 days. And there's a blind homeless guy that like helps him out for a little while, and then he gets jumped by, you know, some like random street toughs, and like it's the one of those things that just like hardens Raphael. And that character's name is Blind Buck. And one of the things that Kevin Eastman told me in interviewing them for the oral histories was that Blind Buck was a name that he used to call Peter Laird, just like as a fun little like goof around thing. And so that character, and being like someone who first showed Raphael like compassion,
Yeah.
that like that's in honor of Pete. And so like I loved the issue when I first read it, and then after talking to Kevin about it, I was like, oh, this is maybe an all-timer, one of my favorite things that the Turtles have done.
What about Mikey?
Mikey's my favorite turtle. He is the most emotionally intelligent of the turtles. He always knows what his friends or his enemies need to hear. And I think my favorite moment for Michelangelo is when he and the rest of the turtles have gone through Toad Baron's Den of Delights and traveled all the way to Siberia to meet with the Man Moth. And like they are there to get advice on how to beat the Rat King. And Man Moth is just like, no, all I do is hunt. And so Michelangelo's like, all right, dude's into hunting, let's hunt. And he sets a trap and like traps him. And Man Moth is like, well fought, little turtle. And you know, I just love Mikey being like, I get the game, we're gonna do it your way, and then we'll be cool together. And that's just Michelangelo repeated like all throughout this series.
I love the way you put that just then, and in the book as well, is that Mikey's the most. That's also how you introduce him within the context
Yep.
of the source book. Is he's the most emotionally intelligent? Because so my favorite's Donatello. It's always been Donatello.
Yeah.
But I've said this many times. If I grew up, you know, now with, you know, Ciro Nieli's cartoon, with Greg Sipes as Michelangelo, and
Yeah.
with Tom Waltz's Michelangelo, I probably would be a Michelangelo guy, because Michelangelo splitting from Splinter is
Huge. Yeah.
might be the most interesting the book ever gets.
Hmm.
Just and it all feels within character. It never feels like they're doing something to stretch Mikey beyond what is like. No, all of it tracks really beautifully.
Yeah.
So like I think Michelangelo. I mean, everybody gets amazing treatment in this book, but like Michelangelo's story is like from like him splitting off and all the stuff, like him having like the I don't know, the wisdom to kind of see Splinter's like kind of full of shit at this moment. Like,
Yeah, well, and when
oh
he
good.
takes the St. Robert's orphans like away from
Yeah.
Foot headquarters, and then like that where he fights Splinter on like that bridge in the sewers, it's like that kind of
Epic.
stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's epic. It's just burned into my brain forever. And yeah, I mean that's all part of why I love Mikey. I definitely went through a journey with who, you know, which turtle was my favorite. When I started, it was definitely Donatello, right?
Mm.
Does machines. How do you say no to that?
Yeah.
And then, you know, as I got a little older, I was like, oh no, but really it's Raphael, because I'm also an angsty teenager like Raphael.
Sure.
But yeah, then in Tom Waltz's hands and in Sophie Campbell's hands, Michelangelo for sure my favorite.
So good. Yeah.
So good.
Um. Okay, so I just want to go over this one more time before we let you
Yep.
go. The issue 1's out now. Issue 2 is out in April 3rd, which should be
Hmm.
right after this episode airs. Is it monthly after that?
So every other month,
Oh, nice.
basically.
Okay.
So yeah, I don't know the release date of issue 3. I know it was just solicited, and then 4 will be a little bit after that, and then I believe the collection comes out in October.
Oh, so cool. Cool.
Yeah, a little bit quicker than they normally do for these things. But the collection looks so handsome. It's got it's got that same kind of spine as the collected edition, except it's green, like
Oh,
it's
nice.
turtle shell green. So I'm very stoked to have that on my shelf eventually.
Usually I end these things by asking who your favorite turtle is, but you just answered that.
Oh shoot.
No, it's okay. Do you have who's your favorite turtle villain? Let's go there.
Favorite turtle villain. I mean, it's hard to argue with Shredder. I mean, he's a classic. Although he gets very team uppy with the turtles at the end of Sophie's run here.
Yeah.
I mean, I really like the IDW treatment of Rat King. I think he's very cool and mysterious. And so I think he rules. Yeah, I'll say it's got a tie between Shredder and Rat King.
Cool.
Who's your favorite
My
Turtles
favorite
villain?
villains. I love Bebop and Rocksteady. Like
Yeah.
I like I love everything. I kind of as a rule like doing this podcast. Like I've interviewed people from like the silly music tour and all that stuff. Like I
Yeah.
love the goofy stuff. Um, so I kind of as a blanket rule like everything or find something to like in everything. But
Hmm.
the thing I'm most attached to is the 1987 series. That's my that's my passion area. And I think just those kind of fun, cute turtles. Uh,
Yeah.
that's the one that kind of does it for me the most. And within that, I think Bebop and Rocksteady are just so much fun. So yeah, it's Bebop and Rocksteady for me for sure.
I love how they are both silly and terrifying in the comic
Yeah,
series.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the comic did a great way of like with Bates and Weaver. It did a great
Mhm.
way of like modernizing them and making them still feel like them, but like useful and threatening. So
Yeah, every now and then like something will happen where it's just like, "Oh no, these guys are going to murder everyone here."
yeah.
Yeah.
All right, dude, this is a huge pleasure. Thank you so much for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Oh, this is so much fun. Thank you so much for having me on and talking about the book. It has been a labor of love, and it's so cool that it's like actually getting out there right now, and people are going to get a chance to read it.
Yeah, and I should have you back when the latter two are up, so we
I
can.
would love that. Yeah.
I'd love to because I'm like it's such a good looking, easy to digest book. Like I can't stress that enough. It's a great read. So I
Yeah. Well, and shout out to Sean Lee, who is the letterer of the series, and also the designer of the source book. So he is he's pulling out all of the individual panels and stuff. I'm suggesting some, but he's doing a lot on his own.
oh nice.
To arrange this in cool ways. And we've got some fun kind of designy things coming up in issues 2 and 3 that he's also knocking out of the park. So like shout out to him. Also shout out to the Utrom Lee Sean that is named after him. Because
Cool.
he gets a shout out in issue 2 as well.
I'm all set here, man. Thanks so much for talking to me. I appreciate it.
Thank you.